Reborn. I let my first love choose someone else again. This time, I walked away forever. There was a saying my grandmother used to repeat whenever she saw Liam and me together. If two people grow up holding each other's hands, fate will eventually tie them together forever. For most of my life, I believed she was right. Liam Bennett had been my first friend, my first secret, my first heartbreak, and my first love. We were born only 3 months apart. Our parents owned neighboring companies. Our families spent every holiday together, and our childhood memories were so intertwined that people rarely mentioned one of us without the other. Everyone joked that our wedding had been decided long before either of us could even understand what marriage meant. When I was 7, Liam stood in front of me to protect me from a group of older children who wanted to steal my backpack. When I was 10, we buried a tiny wooden box beneath the old oak tree behind his house. Inside were letters promising that no matter what happened, we would always remain each other's most important person. When I was 15, he gave me a silver bracelet for my birthday and awkwardly told me that one day he would replace it with a wedding ring. Those memories became the foundation of my entire life. Every important decision I made somehow included Liam. Every dream I had included him standing beside me. I never questioned whether he loved me. I only wondered when he would finally realize it himself. Then we entered university. That was where everything changed. Her name was Chloe Foster. She transferred into our business program halfway through the semester with a bright smile and a gentle voice that made everyone want to protect her. She seemed kind, innocent, and endlessly optimistic. Within weeks, she had become one of the most popular students on campus, including with Liam. At first, I didn't think much of it. Liam had always been kind to everyone. When Chloe struggled with her classes, he offered to tutor her. When she forgot her umbrella, he walked her back to her dormitory. When other students criticized her, he defended her without hesitation. I told myself it was simply who he was. But then the little things started happening. He canceled our plans because Chloe needed help preparing for an exam. He forgot my birthday dinner because Chloe had gotten sick. He missed the concert we had waited months to attend because Chloe was afraid to go home alone after dark. Every single time he apologized, every single time I forgave him. I kept telling myself that next time he would choose me. There was always a next time, until there wasn't. During our final year at university, Liam officially asked Chloe to be his girlfriend. He came to tell me personally. I still remember standing beneath the old oak tree where we had buried our childhood promises. He couldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't want you to hear it from someone else, I smiled. At least I think I did. Congratulations. The word nearly shattered my heart. He reached out as if he wanted to say something else. Maybe he expected me to cry. Maybe he expected me to ask him to stay. Instead, I wished him happiness. When he walked away, I stayed beneath that tree until sunset. That night I dug up the little wooden box we had buried so many years before. Inside were faded photographs, childish drawings, tiny seashells we had collected together, and one letter written in Liam's messy handwriting. No matter who we become, you'll always be my favorite person. I folded the letter carefully. Then I placed everything back into the box and buried it again. Some promises belong to children. Adults don't always remember making them. After graduation, our lives moved in different directions. I joined Carter Technologies, the company my mother had built before she passed away. Liam entered Bennett Holdings to prepare for becoming its future CEO. Although we worked in different companies, our industries often overlapped. We still attended the same charity events, the same business dinners, the same annual galas. Only now, he always arrived, holding Chloe's hand. Years passed. People stopped asking why Liam and I had never married. Instead, they complimented what a beautiful couple Liam and Chloe made. Eventually, I stopped correcting anyone. Some battles quietly end without either side realizing it. Then everything changed again. Late one evening, while reviewing financial reports connected to a joint investment project between our companies, I noticed something that shouldn't have existed. Several transactions had been hidden through shell corporations. Millions of dollars had quietly disappeared. The evidence pointed toward a massive fraud operation. If the deal went through, Bennett Holdings would lose almost everything. I immediately called Liam. He answered, after several rings. Emma, I need to see you. It can't wait. An hour later we met in his office. I placed every document on his desk. You have to stop tomorrow's contract signing. He looked through the files with growing confusion. Before he could finish reading, the office door opened. Chloe walked inside carrying 2 cups of coffee. She looked at the documents before smiling softly. What's all this? Emma thinks someone is stealing from the company. Liam let out a tired sigh. Chloe glanced at me before lowering her eyes. Emma, I know you don't like me, but creating something this serious, isn't it a little too much? I stared at her. I created nothing. The evidence is right there. She gently placed a hand on Liam's arm. You've been under so much pressure lately. Maybe she's just worried. But if you cancel tomorrow's signing without proof, the board will panic. Liam looked from her to me, then back to her. I already knew what he was going to say. Emma, I appreciate your concern, but Chloe's right. We need more evidence. There isn't time. There has to be. His answer sounded calm, reasonable, responsible. It also signed the death sentence I had already lived through once. I gathered my documents without another word. As I reached the door, Liam called my name. I'll look into it. I smiled sadly. I know, but by the time you do, it'll already be too late. The next morning, I went to the abandoned warehouse where the missing funds had been traced. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I only wanted one final piece of evidence. Instead, I found the people behind the fraud. They had already realized someone was following the money. I never made it back. The last thing I remembered was the sound of twisting metal, shattered glass, and someone desperately calling for an ambulance. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in a hospital. I was standing inside a familiar classroom. Students laughed around me. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The professor hadn't arrived yet. A calendar hung above the blackboard, September 3rd. The first day Chloe Foster transferred into our university. The first day, Liam would slowly begin walking away from me. I lowered my eyes to the silver bracelet around my wrist. The one he had given me years before, in my previous life. I had spent years hoping he would choose me. This time, I already knew his answer. I slowly unclasped the bracelet and closed it inside my hand. Then I whispered the only promise that mattered anymore. This life, I won't wait for someone who never chose me. Outside the classroom, footsteps echoed through the hallway. The professor entered. Behind him walked Chloe Foster. And for the first time in both my lives, I felt absolutely nothing high. This is Midnight Story House. Like and subscribe for more. The strange thing about getting a second chance wasn't remembering the future. It was remembering how much time I had wasted hoping someone else would change. As Professor Harris introduced Chloe Foster to the class, I already knew every word she was about to say. I remembered the shy smile that won everyone's affection within minutes. I remembered the nervous laugh that made people want to protect her. Most of all, I remembered the exact moment Liam looked at her for the first time. In my previous life, I hadn't noticed it. Now I did. His eyes lingered just a little longer than they should have. Not because he loved her, not yet, but because fate had quietly opened a new path, and he had already taken the first step without realizing it. The professor asked Chloe to choose an empty seat. I knew exactly where she would sit, right beside Liam. She smiled politely before taking the chair. Liam welcomed her with the warm kindness that had always been part of his nature. I simply opened my notebook and began writing. This wasn't the beginning of my tragedy anymore. It was the beginning of my freedom after class. Liam caught up with me outside the lecture hall. Emma, I turned with a smile. Morning? He frowned slightly. You left without waiting. I had another class. We always have lunch together. I searched my memory. He was right. The original Emma had arranged her entire schedule around his. I already made plans. His expression became confused. You did? Yes. With who? Myself. He laughed as if I had made a joke. I didn't explain that I wasn't joking. Instead, I waved goodbye and walked toward the economics building, leaving him standing in the middle of the courtyard. For the first time since we were children, he was the one watching me walk away. Over the following weeks, history repeated itself. Chloe struggled with accounting. Liam volunteered to tutor her. She forgot her umbrella. He offered to walk her home. She couldn't understand. One of the professors. He spent hours helping her prepare for exams. None of it surprised me. What surprised everyone else was my complete lack of reaction. In my previous life, I had found excuses to interrupt them. I would bring Liam coffee while they studied, offer to help Chloe with assignments she never actually wanted my help with, invite Liam to dinner whenever he spent too much time with her. Every attempt only made me look jealous. This time, I stayed away. When I saw them studying together in the library, I simply borrowed the books I needed and found another table. When they laughed together in the cafeteria, I greeted them politely before sitting with other classmates. When people whispered that Liam and Chloe looked good together, I continued eating as though I hadn't heard a thing. The rumors spread quickly, so Emma finally gave up. I thought she'd be furious. Maybe she realized Liam never liked her that way. Every word reached my ears. None of them hurt as much as they once had, because this time, I knew my worth wasn't determined by someone else's choice. One afternoon, Professor Williams stopped me after class. He was one of the university's most respected finance professors, famous for mentoring students who later became successful entrepreneurs. Emma, do you have a moment? Of course. He handed me a brochure. The university is selecting students for an international investment competition. I looked down at the paper. In my previous life, I had turned down this exact opportunity. The competition took place during Liam's birthday week, and I had convinced myself being beside him mattered more than advancing my own future. I smiled softly. How foolish I had been. I'd like to participate. Professor Williams looked pleased. I hoped you'd say that. You've always been one of my brightest students. His words caught me off guard. No one had ever said something like that to me in my previous life. Perhaps they had. Perhaps I had simply been too focused on Liam to hear them. Training for the competition became part of my daily routine. I stayed late at the finance laboratory, read investment reports until midnight, worked with students from different departments. Slowly, my world expanded beyond one person. It felt refreshing. One evening, as I packed my books into my bag, Liam appeared outside the classroom. I've been looking for you. You found me. You've been impossible to reach. I've been studying. You've skipped dinner with my family 3 times. I know. My mother keeps asking where you are. I smiled. Tell Aunt Rebecca I'm sorry. That's it. What do you mean? You always come. I didn't feel like it. He looked genuinely puzzled. For years, my life had revolved around his family's invitations. Now I was declining them without hesitation. I thought something was wrong. Everything's fine. He hesitated before asking the question that had clearly been bothering him. Are you angry because I've been helping Chloe? I almost laughed. No, you don't seem convinced. I'm not angry. Then why does it feel like you're avoiding me? I'm not avoiding you. I'm simply living my own life. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. The investment competition arrived sooner than expected. Students from universities across the country gathered in the capital for 3 days of presentations, negotiations, and simulated acquisitions. The atmosphere was exhilarating. For the first time, I wasn't known as Liam Bennett's childhood friend. I was simply Emma Carter, a competitor and analyst, someone whose ideas deserved to be heard. Our team won first place. When my name was announced, applause filled the auditorium. Professor Williams shook my hand proudly. I knew you could do it. Reporters interviewed several finalists. A representative from an international investment firm invited me to apply for a prestigious internship overseas. Everything I had dreamed of in my previous life was suddenly within reach. As I left the venue carrying the championship trophy, I unexpectedly saw Liam standing near the entrance. He looked surprised. I didn't know you entered the competition. I almost didn't. He glanced at the trophy. You won. My team did. He smiled. I'm proud of you. There was warmth in his voice. The same warmth I had spent years waiting to hear. Strangely, it no longer made my heart race. Thank you. He looked around before speaking again. I wanted to celebrate. I can't. You already have plans. I do. What plans? I lifted the invitation letter from the international firm. I have an interview. His smile slowly faded. Oh, I didn't realize. I know. I excused myself and walked toward the hotel where the interviews were being held. As I disappeared into the crowd, Liam remained where he was, watching, thinking. Perhaps for the first time, he was beginning to realize how little he actually knew about the girl who had always stood quietly beside him. Weeks later, another moment from my previous life arrived. The annual university gala. Last time, Liam had invited me weeks in advance. Then, on the morning of the event, Chloe had called him in tears after twisting her ankle. He canceled our plans without hesitation. I had cried all night. This time, I already knew what was coming. Sure enough, my phone rang that afternoon. Emma. Liam, I'm sorry. Something came up. I know. He paused. You know, you need to accompany Chloe. Silence. How did you? It doesn't matter. I'm really sorry. I smiled even though he couldn't see me. It's okay. Have fun. He sounded almost disappointed. You aren't upset? No, really. After hanging up, I put my phone away, changed into an elegant navy blue evening gown, and attended the gala anyway, just not with Liam. Professor Williams introduced me to several executives from leading investment companies. One of them spent nearly half an hour discussing future opportunities with me. Another offered me a summer internship before the evening had even ended, as I laughed with my new colleagues. I happened to glance across the ballroom. Liam had just arrived. Chloe stood beside him, smiling brightly. His eyes searched the room absent-mindedly, until they landed on me. For a brief moment, he simply stared. Not because I looked different, but because I wasn't looking at him. I was smiling, laughing, living, and for the first time since we were children, I looked happier without him than I had ever looked with him. I didn't know it then, but that was the exact moment Liam Bennett began losing the version of me who had once loved him without limits. And unlike my previous life, this time, I had no intention of waiting for him to notice. Winning the investment competition changed something inside me. In my previous life, every achievement had felt incomplete unless Liam was there to witness it. I wanted his praise more than the achievement itself. If he smiled, I felt successful. If he was too busy to notice, every victory seemed meaningless now. For the first time, my happiness belonged entirely to me. The internship offer from the international investment firm arrived only a week after the competition. Professor Williams personally handed me the acceptance letter. I knew they would choose you. I smiled as I read the document for what felt like the 10th time. The internship would begin during the summer in Singapore, one of the most competitive financial hubs in the world. In my previous life, I had rejected this exact opportunity because Liam had invited me to spend the summer helping at Bennett Holdings. I had convinced myself that supporting his dream was more important than building my own. Looking back, I almost couldn't recognize the girl who had made that decision. Professor Williams adjusted his glasses before asking, "You'll accept it, won't you?" Without hesitation. I nodded, absolutely. He smiled proudly. Good. Never sacrifice your future for someone else's comfort. His words stayed with me long after I left his office. It felt as though fate itself was rewarding me every time I chose myself instead of waiting for someone else. Meanwhile, life continued exactly as I remembered. Liam spent more and more time with Chloe. She always seemed to need something. Help with an assignment, advice before an exam, someone to accompany her home, someone to fix another small problem. He never complained. He simply appeared whenever she called. In my previous life, every one of those moments had broken my heart. Now, they simply reminded me why I had walked away. One afternoon, I was studying in the business library when Chloe approached my table. She carried 2 cups of coffee and wore the same sweet smile everyone admired. Emma, I looked up politely. Hi, I brought you a coffee, thank you. She placed it beside my notebook before sitting across from me. I've been wanting to talk. I'm listening. She hesitated. I hope you don't misunderstand Liam and me. I don't. You don't. I smiled. No, she blinked. I thought. She stopped herself. You thought I'd be jealous? A faint blush crossed her face. I didn't mean that. It's okay. I know what people say. She looked genuinely confused. You really don't mind? I closed my textbook. Chloe, yes, Liam has always had the right to choose whoever makes him happy. So do I. She stared at me for several seconds. For the first time, I noticed uncertainty replacing the confidence she usually carried. Without a rival, she didn't know how to win. As she quietly left the library, I returned to my studies without another thought. Weeks later, our class received the results of the semester's comprehensive finance examination. Professor Harris stood at the front of the room with an unusually satisfied smile. I've never seen scores this high. Students immediately began whispering excitedly. He started reading the names. 3rd place, 2nd place, then 1st place, Emma Carter. The classroom erupted into applause. I walked to the front to receive my paper. A perfect score. Professor Harris smiled. I expect great things from you. As I returned to my seat, I noticed Liam watching me. There was genuine admiration in his eyes, not the casual praise of a childhood friend. Something deeper, something he hadn't noticed before. After class, he caught up with me once again. Congratulations, thank you. You've been amazing lately. I've been working hard, I can see that. We walked across campus together for the first time in months. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply unfamiliar. Finally, Liam spoke. I feel like I hardly know what's happening in your life anymore. I smiled softly. That's probably true. You used to tell me everything. I used to. He looked down at the path beneath our feet. I miss that. Those words would have made me cry in my previous life. Now, they only made me realize how much I had changed. I don't. He stopped walking. What? I don't miss needing someone to validate every decision I make. His expression fell. Is that what you think I did? I looked at him calmly. No, that's what I allowed. There was nothing else to say. I wished him a good afternoon and continued toward the entrepreneurship building. Behind me, I could feel him standing still, thinking. The university soon announced its annual Innovation Challenge, where students competed to present business ideas to a panel of investors. In the past, I had refused to participate because the event took place on the same weekend as Chloe's birthday. Liam had planned a celebration and asked me to help organize it. I had accepted without question. This time, I registered on the first day applications opened. Over the next 2 months, I worked alongside 3 classmates to develop a financial technology platform that would simplify investments for small business owners. The project consumed nearly every spare hour I had: late-night brainstorming sessions, prototype testing, investor presentations. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to build something alongside people who believed in my abilities instead of expecting my sacrifices. On presentation day, the auditorium was packed. Business leaders from across the country filled the audience. As our presentation ended, applause echoed throughout the room. The judges unanimously selected our project as the winner. One investor approached us immediately afterward. I'd like to finance this. None of us could speak for several seconds. Everything was happening so quickly, as reporters surrounded our team for interviews. I happened to notice Liam standing near the back of the auditorium. He wasn't there for me. He had come to support Chloe's presentation, except Chloe's team hadn't even reached the finals. Instead of watching her, he was watching me. Our eyes met briefly. He smiled, this time. His smile carried something unfamiliar. Pride, mixed with regret. That evening my phone buzzed repeatedly. Several messages from classmates, congratulations from professors, interview invitations, and finally, a message from Liam. Would you like to have dinner tomorrow? Just the 2 of us. I looked at the screen for a long moment before replying. I'm sorry, I already have plans. The truth was simple. I had plans, just not with him. The next afternoon, I attended my first meeting with the investors interested in funding our project. The discussion lasted nearly 4 hours. When I finally left the building, my phone showed 6 missed calls, all from Liam. I sighed quietly before calling him back. He answered immediately. Emma, is everything okay? I was worried. My phone was on silent. I waited at the restaurant. I frowned slightly. You did. You said you couldn't come. I know. I just thought. He paused. I thought maybe you'd change your mind. I closed my eyes for a brief second. That sentence sounded painfully familiar. How many nights had I spent hoping he would change his mind? Too many. I'm sorry. I really was busy. Silence lingered between us. Then he asked the question I had been expecting for weeks. Do you ever miss how things used to be? I looked through the glass walls of the office building behind me. Inside, my teammates laughed while celebrating our first investment agreement. For the first time in years, I knew exactly where I belonged. I miss who I used to think you were. The line went completely silent. When Liam finally spoke, his voice had become almost a whisper. What does that mean? It means, I spent years loving the version of you I created in my own heart. I kept believing that one day you'd choose me, but you already made your choice, and I finally accepted it. He didn't answer, neither did I. After ending the call, I slipped my phone into my bag and walked back into the building. Behind me, somewhere across the city, Liam Bennett remained alone in an empty restaurant, staring at the chair across from him. For the first time since we were children, he understood what absence truly felt like, not because I had disappeared, but because I had finally stopped waiting. And while he was beginning to realize what he had lost, I was far too busy building a future that no longer depended on whether he ever looked back. By the time summer arrived, my life no longer revolved around university. Classes were only one part of my schedule. The startup my teammates and I had created after winning the innovation challenge was growing faster than any of us had expected. What had begun as a student project was now attracting serious investors. Every week brought another meeting, another opportunity, another reason to believe I had finally stepped onto the path that had always been waiting for me. The internship in Singapore changed everything. For 3 months, I worked alongside analysts who evaluated billion-dollar acquisitions before lunch and discussed global markets over dinner. They didn't know me as Liam Bennett's childhood friend. They didn't know the quiet girl who always stood beside someone else. They only knew Emma Carter, and for the first time, that was enough. My supervisor, Eleanor Brooks, became one of the most influential mentors of my life. She was known throughout the industry for her sharp instincts and impossible standards. On my second week, she asked me a question that stayed with me long after I returned home. What motivates you? In my previous life, I would have answered without hesitation, Liam, his happiness, his approval, his future. Now I simply smiled. I want to build something that will still matter even if no one applauds. Eleanor nodded with quiet satisfaction. Good. The people who chase applause usually stop working once they receive it. The people who chase purpose never stop improving. When the internship ended, she offered me a permanent position after graduation. I accepted immediately. Back home, however, life wasn't unfolding as smoothly. Bennett Holdings had begun experiencing a series of strange financial inconsistencies. Minor contracts disappeared. Suppliers suddenly withdrew from important projects. Several confidential proposals somehow reached competitors before official announcements. The same warning signs I had seen in my previous life were appearing again. Only this time, I remained silent, not because I wanted revenge, because I had already tried saving everyone once. No one had believed me. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Liam. Emma, it's been a while. It has. Can we meet? I hesitated for only a moment. All right. We met at the small cafe where we had celebrated our high school graduation years earlier. Nothing had changed. The old wooden tables, the scent of fresh coffee, the owner still remembered us. Only we were different. Liam looked exhausted. The confident smile that once came so naturally now seemed forced. Congratulations. I heard your company signed another investment. Thank you. You've accomplished so much. So have you. He laughed bitterly. I wish that were true. There was a long silence before he finally admitted what had been weighing on him. Something is wrong at Bennett Holdings. I stirred my coffee quietly. I know. He looked surprised. You know, I read financial reports. I can recognize warning signs. He leaned forward. Then tell me, what am I missing? For a brief moment, memories flooded my mind. The office, the documents. His calm voice telling me there wasn't enough evidence. The warehouse, the accident, my funeral. I slowly placed my cup back on the table. I'm sorry. I can't help you. His face fell. Emma, you understand these things better than anyone. You could save us. I looked directly into his eyes. I already tried once. He frowned. What do you mean? I smiled faintly. Nothing. He couldn't understand. Not yet. When we left the cafe, I wished him good luck. As I watched him disappear into the crowd, I silently hoped he would discover the truth before history repeated itself. Unfortunately, some lessons refused to be learned the easy way. Several weeks later, Bennett Holdings announced the suspension of one of its largest investment projects. News outlets immediately began reporting financial losses worth hundreds of millions. The Bennett family became the center of public attention. Television commentators questioned the company's leadership. Investors demanded explanations. Employees feared layoffs. The nightmare had begun. One evening, my father entered my office carrying a tablet. He looked unusually serious. The Bennetts are in trouble, I saw. He placed the tablet on my desk. Their stock dropped nearly 30% today. I nodded silently. After a long pause, he asked, if they ask for your help, what will you do? I thought carefully before answering. I'll compete fairly, but I won't sacrifice my own future to rescue someone who never valued it. My father smiled quietly. I was hoping you'd say that. It was the first time I truly understood how proud he had become of me, not because I was successful, because I finally respected myself. 3 days later, the truth exploded across every major news channel. The financial fraud reached far deeper than anyone had imagined. Several executives had secretly accepted bribes for years. False contracts, fake suppliers, shell companies. Everything I had tried to warn Liam about in my previous life. This time, the evidence was undeniable. Police investigations began immediately. Within 48 hours, multiple arrests were announced. The company narrowly avoided complete collapse. Late that evening, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Liam's name. I answered after several rings. His voice sounded broken. "Emma, I found the reports." "What reports?" "The ones you tried to show me." My fingers tightened around the phone. I compared them with the investigation. "You were right. I know. You knew all along." "Yes." There was silence. Then, "Why didn't you tell me again?" The question lingered between us. I closed my eyes. I already had. He didn't speak. Neither did I. Finally, he whispered, "I'm sorry." The words carried years of regret. Years of missed opportunities. Years of choices he wished he could undo. "I know. I should have listened. You should have. I chose Chloe every time." "Yes. I thought you were jealous." "I know. I thought you would always forgive me." I smiled sadly. "So did I." The call ended without another word. Some conversations don't need dramatic endings. The silence says everything. A week later, I learned the full story during the investigation. Police uncovered emails proving that Chloe had unknowingly introduced Liam to one of the consultants responsible for the fraud. She hadn't participated intentionally. She had simply trusted the wrong people. But when investigators questioned her, something unexpected happened. She tried to shift the blame onto Liam publicly. Every television channel broadcast the interview. She insisted he had approved every decision himself. Watching from my office, I realized something. The girl Liam had chosen over and over again was choosing herself, exactly as I had once wished I could. Only the difference was simple. I had never betrayed him. She had. 2 days later, Liam appeared outside my office. He looked as though he hadn't slept for days. Dark circles framed his eyes. His usually perfect suit hung loosely on his shoulders. When my assistant asked whether I wanted to send him away, I quietly shook my head. He entered slowly, for several seconds. Neither of us spoke. Then he looked around the office. Employees smiled as they walked past. Awards lined the shelves. Large windows overlooked the city. Everything reflected years of hard work. Everything reflected a life I had built without him. "I finally understand." His voice barely rose above a whisper. I waited. "I spent years believing you would always be there. You were. I thought your love was something I never had to earn." I remained silent. "I never realized that every time I chose someone else, I was teaching you that you didn't matter." My chest tightened. Not because I still loved him, because hearing the truth out loud hurt more than I expected. He slowly reached into his coat pocket, then placed something on my desk, a small silver bracelet, the one he had given me when we were 15. "I found this." It was in the box beneath the old oak tree. For a moment, time seemed to stop. "You opened it." "I did. I read every letter." His voice cracked. "I didn't remember writing half of them, but you kept every single one." He lowered his head. "I never realized how much you loved me." A peaceful smile appeared on my face. "I know, I was too late. Yes, I don't deserve another chance." "No." Tears filled his eyes. Not loud, not dramatic, simply honest. "I wish I had become the man you believed I was." I looked at the bracelet resting between us. For years it had symbolized hope. Now, it simply symbolized the end of a chapter. I gently pushed it back toward him. "Keep it." He looked confused. "Why?" "Because the girl who wore it doesn't exist anymore." He stared at me for a long time. Then, with trembling hands, he picked it up once more. As he reached the door, he stopped. Without turning around, he asked one final question. "Was there ever a moment when you stopped loving me?" I looked out through the window, where the evening sun reflected against the glass towers surrounding my office. Then I answered honestly, "No, I never stopped. I simply loved myself enough to finally let you go." The door closed quietly behind him. For the first time in both our lives, neither of us cried. Because we both understood the same truth. Some loves don't end because they disappear. They end because one person finally realizes they deserve to be chosen. And I had finally become the person who chose me. People often believe that a second chance exists to correct old mistakes. I used to think the same. I believed fate had sent me back so Liam and I could finally have the future we were always meant to share. It seemed like the perfect explanation. Why else would I wake up years before my death with every memory of my previous life intact? But somewhere along the way, I realized I had misunderstood the gift I had been given. Rebirth had never been about winning back my first love. It had been about learning how to stop losing myself. The investigation into Bennett Holdings lasted several months. Although the company survived, it paid a heavy price. Several senior executives were imprisoned. The board of directors was reorganized. Major investors withdrew their support. Liam worked day and night to rebuild the company his family had spent generations creating. For the first time in his life, he carried responsibilities that no one else could solve for him. Whenever our companies attended the same business conferences, we occasionally crossed paths. We always greeted each other politely. Sometimes we exchanged a few words about the market. Sometimes we simply nodded before continuing in opposite directions. People who didn't know our history assumed we were nothing more than professional acquaintances. Perhaps that was the healthiest thing we had ever become. Meanwhile, Carter Technologies continued expanding. The investment platform my university team had created evolved into one of the country's fastest-growing financial technology companies. International firms offered partnerships. Business magazines requested interviews. By the time I graduated, I no longer needed to search for opportunities. They found me, one morning. My assistant entered my office carrying a large envelope. It arrived from London. Inside was an official invitation. One of Europe's largest investment groups wanted me to become their youngest regional director. The position included relocating overseas, 5 years earlier. Accepting such an offer would have terrified me, not because of the work, because it would have meant leaving Liam behind. Now, the decision took less than 5 minutes. I'll accept, my assistant smiled. I thought you would. That evening I told my parents over dinner. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. My father smiled quietly. You've built everything yourself. Those simple words meant more to me than they probably realized. For so many years, I had measured my value by someone else's affection. Now the people who truly loved me celebrated my achievements without asking me to sacrifice anything in return. A week later, news of my departure spread throughout the business community. Congratulations arrived from former professors. Friends organized farewell dinners. Even competitors sent kind messages. Only one person remained silent until the night before my flight. I had just finished packing when my phone rang. Liam, for several seconds, I stared at the screen before answering. Hello, I heard you're leaving. Yes, for good. I don't know what the future holds. I only know I'm moving forward. His breathing became uneven. Could we meet? After a long silence, I answered. One last time. The next afternoon we met beneath the old oak tree behind his childhood home. The same tree where we had buried our little wooden box. The same tree where he had once promised I would always be his favorite person. Autumn had already painted the leaves gold. The air carried the familiar scent of earth after rain. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, Liam broke the silence. I dug up the box again. I know. I read every letter. I know. I couldn't stop thinking about how many chances you gave me. His voice trembled. I don't deserve another one. No, I still wanted to ask. He took a slow breath before looking directly into my eyes. Emma, if I had chosen you from the beginning, would we have been happy? I smiled softly. Very. A painful smile appeared on his face. I thought so, but we didn't. No, I kept believing there would always be another tomorrow. There isn't. I know. He looked toward the old tree. I spent years chasing someone who made me feel needed. All this time, the person who truly loved me was quietly standing beside me. I followed his gaze to the place where our childhood memories rested beneath the soil. Sometimes we don't recognize the most precious things until they become memories. He nodded slowly. I wanted to become the man you deserved. I believe you. But I became that man too late. Yes. He laughed quietly through tears. You've become incredibly honest. I've become peaceful. Those words seemed to reach him more deeply than anything else I had said. For the first time, he understood that peace was something I had found without him. It wasn't something he could offer me anymore. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the silver bracelet I had returned to him. I wanted to give this back. I gently closed his fingers around it. No, it belongs to your memories now, and yours. My memories don't need objects anymore. He looked at the bracelet for several moments before slipping it back into his pocket. I don't know how to let you go. You already did. When? The first time you chose someone else? The words weren't spoken with anger, only truth. He closed his eyes. Every birthday he had forgotten, every promise he had broken, every time he had told himself Emma would understand. Every choice had quietly led us to this moment. When he opened his eyes again, they were filled with acceptance instead of desperation. I hope someone loves you the way you loved me. I smiled. I hope someone chooses me the way I once chose you. This time, neither of us cried. We simply stood beneath the old oak tree one final time, then I turned around and walked away. I didn't stop. I didn't look back, because in my previous life, I had spent years watching Liam walk away from me. This life. It was finally my turn. The following morning, my plane left just after sunrise. As the city disappeared beneath the clouds, I rested my head against the window. Surprisingly, I didn't feel sadness, only gratitude. Years passed. London became my new home. The company I helped build expanded across Europe and Asia. I mentored young entrepreneurs who reminded me of the ambitious girl I had once been. Several years later, at an international investment summit in Singapore, I met someone unexpected. His name was Alexander Hayes. He wasn't charming because he tried to impress people. He was kind because kindness came naturally to him. He listened more than he spoke. He respected my opinions without feeling threatened by them. When we disagreed, he discussed ideas instead of questioning my worth. For months we worked together as business partners. Friendship slowly became affection. Affection eventually became love. One evening, after a successful conference, we walked through a quiet botanical garden, illuminated by hundreds of small lights. Alexander stopped beside a lake. I've been meaning to ask you something. I laughed. You sound nervous. I am. He smiled before taking my hand. I don't want someone who will spend her life following me. I want someone who will walk beside me. Emma, would you? For a brief moment, I thought about the girl who had once waited beneath an old oak tree, convinced that loving someone enough would eventually make them choose her. She had waited for years. She had cried countless nights. She had believed that patience alone could change another person's heart. I silently thanked that girl. Without her pain, I would never have become the woman standing here. I looked into Alexander's eyes and smiled. Yes, this time, I wasn't chosen because someone finally realized my worth after losing me. I was chosen because someone had recognized my worth from the very beginning. Months later, while attending an international business forum, I unexpectedly saw Liam again. His company had recovered remarkably well. He looked older, calmer. There were a few silver strands in his hair now. When he noticed me, he smiled, a genuine smile, not filled with hope, not filled with regret, simply warmth. He noticed the engagement ring on my hand. I see you found your happiness. I did. I'm glad. And you? He looked toward the conference hall, where several young executives waited for him. I finally learned to appreciate the people who choose to stay. I nodded. I'm happy to hear that. For a moment, we stood there as two people whose lives had once been inseparable. Now they were simply two parallel stories that had taken different directions. Before leaving, Liam said something that made me smile. Thank you. For what? For teaching me that love isn't about waiting for someone forever. It's about choosing them every single day. I wished him well. Then I walked back toward Alexander, who greeted me with the same warm smile that had become my favorite place in the world. As he took my hand, I realized something. People often ask whether I regret loving Liam for so many years. The answer is no. That love taught me kindness, patience, loyalty, but it also taught me the most important lesson of all. No matter how deeply you love someone, you should never love them more than you love yourself. When I was reborn, I thought fate had given me another chance to win my first love. I couldn't have been more wrong. It had given me something infinitely more precious, a second chance to choose myself. And the moment I finally did, everything I had once believed I had lost found its way back to me, in a form far more beautiful than I had ever imagined. This time, I walked away forever, not because I stopped believing in love, but because I finally understood that real love never asks you to beg for a place in someone's heart. It simply makes room for you from the very beginning.